Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell. I'm recording this on June 28th. We're going to be going over some of the news, also some videos that I thought were very interesting that we should talk about that are a little bit more at a societal level and what's going on in the United States. Please help support the work that I do by being a paid member to my Patreon channel, and you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. It's very easy to help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free, so please help support the work that I do and share the links and ask your social media to follow me. All the links are in this description of my channels, my feeds, and how to consume the content that I create. So please help support the work that I do. In addition, I have great products that if you stack the way I tell you to, you're going to help improve your health and wellness and slow down the aging process. It's very effective and very cost effective to do if you just pay attention. In addition, my videos that I do, if you listen, you can make money in the market. All right? Now, I look at it from a macro perspective, but if you listen, you'll make money. Now, that whole trip of going up with oil and down with oil, I made a decent amount. All you had to do was listen. Same thing with the S&P 500. If you paid attention to me during the tariff proposals that Trump had last year that happened in April on April 2nd, and how it hurt the market, and everyone was saying it was going to be Armageddon and all. I said, no, buy in, buy in, buy in. You would have made a lot of money. All you got to do is listen and just wait. Just listen. You'll make money and you'll get healthy. Okay, with that, we're going to listen to Bloomberg about one of their analysts thinks that oil is going to go to $40 a barrel, which it's not. And I'll tell you the reasons why. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. Or you can get the gladiator barley. Does everything that the heirloom barley does, but it gives you one added benefit, and that is it'll help to build muscle when you do resistance training. So depending on if you want to build muscle or not, take the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley, but it's important to take either one of them to help with bringing down that inflammation, soaking up those free radicals, and detoxifying your body regularly. And when you do that, you're going to be improving your endocrine system, improving your immune system, improving your cardiovascular system, helping with brain function. And when you're helping with your endocrine system, you're helping with your thyroid, you're helping with your kidney function, your liver function, renal function. So please do me a favor. Take my advice. Get the great products that I offer, and you will get the benefits that will help to get you healthy and have the longevity. All right, with that, let's listen to Bloomberg on how they think it's going to be $40 a barrel by year end. And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. One big reason is the Saudis won't allow it. They need about $75 to $80 a barrel to just break even for their government budget. So if Brent usually trades slightly higher than WTI, and if WTI is trading at 40, well, that means that Brent's going to be trading at about 45. Saudis and the GCC can't afford that. Something big would happen in the Middle East. Again, you can't view the oil market 100% with fundamentals. It's more a composition of behavior and event risk than fundamentals.
Christina has a host of questions about the Strait. We're going to get into all of that in a minute, but I want to go to your most recent note. You talk about the superabundance trends in the Western Hemisphere and a major reversion that perhaps we are looking at in the second half of the year here. You're forecasting or expecting might get to $40 a barrel on WTI. Explain how we could get there.
Yes, well, hello. The key way we get there is by pumping prices up too much, and it accelerates the process of superabundance in the Western Hemisphere, most notably.
So if you're going to be at $80, $90 a barrel, that we're going to pump so much of this that there's going to be a superabundance and the oil's going to crash. What's going to happen is it's going to be trading. I think by year end, if everything is peaceful in the Middle East, which is highly unlikely, but if that happens, we're probably going to be trading in a $55 to $65 trading range, not $40 a barrel.
As of right now, the U.S. and Canada are running a surplus of supply versus demand in crude oil, liquid fuels around 7 million barrels a day. If prices don't go lower.
But we have the storage tankers in Cushing, Oklahoma, that are at record low levels. We need to pump out a lot of oil and put it back in to Oklahoma storage facilities. So it's going to be absorbed. So there's not going to be a big drop in oil. See, a lot of people don't understand this. We pump oil out of the tank of these reserve tanks, and shipped it overseas. And you have to have a certain amount of oil in the tanker to get the suction to be able to pump it out of the tank. It's getting close to the point where you don't get the suction to be able to get it out. So let's see if he says this, because you have to put the oil back in to these tanks. And it's a lot. And then on top of it, we have our strategic reserve that has been depleted. So you have to fill that up again. So you have to fill up Cushing, Oklahoma, and the strategic oil reserve that we have. That's going to soak up oil and bring it up, bring up the price, on top of the dynamics of the price that needs to be for Brent to pay for the social programs in Saudi Arabia.
That off, we're probably going to head towards 10 million barrels a day by 2028. It's not just crude oil. We have to export our corn, soybeans, and wheat. It's a wonderful thing of superabundance. It's just bad for prices. What I think we just did is we reaccelerated that process with prices going up. And it has inklings very much of 2008. Crude oil peaked at 147, and by the end of the year, it was around 40. We are doing that right now. I'll just give you one example. At the beginning of the year, we had pumps and then dumps and just Bitcoin and natural gas. And now that list includes gold, silver, platinum, palladium, iron ore, corn, and potentially U.S. Treasury bond yields. So the key theme is, right now, for the second half of the year, I think all those prices are going to continue to go lower.
Oh, it'll go lower.
This is where
it will for sure go lower. I do this daily. All right, I talk about the oil market daily and what the trading ranges are, because I'm in and out of the market all the time. All right, so I know this. It will go down, but it's not going to go down to $40 a barrel and maintain that. It would be shocking if it lasts for one day, maybe 2 days, but it's going to go back to a trading range of $55, $65 a barrel, I suspect, all right, especially in the near term this year. Now, that could happen, but there's a higher probability of it creeping up to about $74, $75, $76 a barrel. We're probably going to be in a trading range of anywhere from $69 to about $78 a barrel because of the fiasco that's happening with the Strait right now. So in the near term, it's going to go up compared to the close of Friday. Now, by year end, it may drop down to the low 60s, but it's not going to 40.
I get annoyed because the traffic in the strait is hardly back to pre-war levels. So why are we seeing this confidence in the oil market that these prices are going?
Exactly. And not just that. He's so confident that crop yields will be great. Well, wait a minute here. Why? We have a super El Nino event. So certain areas of the country are wetter than normal, which is going to be bad for crops, and drier than normal, which would be bad for crops. So you have weather conditions that may actually bring yields down. Plus, fertilizer is more expensive because of what happened in the strait. So farmers' break even will be even worse. So why would you think that they were going to have just an abundance of corn? Really? Let's wait until, don't count the corn until it grows, all right? Don't count the chickens until they hatch. Not impressed with this guy over at Bloomberg Intelligence.
Down. Why is it dropping so shortly when the reality on the ground isn't really reflecting that yet?
Exactly.
Because we're finding out the one of the most significant bull markets in commodities is increasing elasticity. When prices go up, markets find ways around. We're finding out that
it's too fundamental.
OPEC is becoming increasingly redundant. Now, UAE has
really?
So they're going to be drilling that well. Iraq is threatened to leave. They want to drill well. So what's happened is it accelerated Mr. Trump's mantra of drill will.
Well, there's a good point that he's making here. OPEC may be losing its relevance. You had the UAE leave. So we may see OPEC breaking apart and the cartel, and they're going to be pumping more oil to get more market share. Okay, so there'll be more oil on the market, but it'll get to a point where they have to stop that because the price is going down too far. There's always a sweet point where if the price is too high, it hurts demand. And if the price is too low, it hurts supply. It meaning that it's too low and they have to cut production to be able to bring it back up. So there's the sweet spot. Oil can't be too high and can't be too low. Can't be too high because of the consumer, and it can't be too low because of the producer. And so therefore, it's going to be at some sort of equilibrium. Now, if OPEC broke apart, which it hasn't, but if OPEC broke apart, then you would have a rush of oil onto the market, price would drop, and then all of a sudden they stop production, and then price would reach to equilibrium based on this lag effect of the breaking apart of OPEC. But that's not happening, all right? And they've been pumping more. I've been covering it for 2 years. They've been pumping more oil. OPEC and OPEC plus countries, some of them, were pumping more oil than what their quota was. And that's been going on for over a year, or a year and a half. And that was when that was happening, trading range for WTI was around $55 to $62 a barrel.
Places now that includes Venezuela, U.S., Canada, UAE, Iraq potentially. So it's what's happening in the space. And what was before the problem was the key thing to remember is technology is bad for prices in crude oil on both sides of supply and demand. It's creating more supply and reducing demand. And this event, just like it did in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, just adds fuel to those trends. So I look at it as, yes, we might bounce. There might be something really bad to happen in the Gulf. Maybe crude oil gets in there at 80, but on a normal cycle, it goes back to 40. And one key thing to remember is almost every time you have swoons in crude oil, it happens with the stock market going down. And we have volatility picking up everywhere in the stock market, just prices are still hovering at those levels. So we get a little dip for a normal midterm year, that means everything goes down. Crude oil and copper are kind of next on the list in commodities.
It's adding fuel to those
I heard
trends.
that.
David, what we did there. It's adding a little bit of an oil pun.
It's oil pun, energy pun. I want to ask you about the president's comments on gasoline prices in specific. So this week he raised the prospect of us getting $2.50 a gallon gasoline once again. He's also had a very strong message to the gas companies, the gasoline companies, the energy companies themselves. Let's play a little bit of what the president has said, the anger that he's directing at those gas companies.
We are not seeing anything at the pump by comparison to what it should be. We should be, in my opinion, at $2.25. ExxonMobil, it's Chevron, it's Shell, it's BP. They're not reducing the prices commensurate.
Wait a minute. Gasoline takes some time to make, and then it takes some time to ship. And so the oil that came to the refinery, that went to the refinery to be processed into gasoline, isn't today. It was, so today's gasoline that's being shipped to the gas station is based about 4 weeks ago, maybe even more. So it was what the price was 4 weeks ago, which was higher. And so it's going to take at least 4 to 6 weeks of lag before gasoline prices start to drop. See, your refinery, you get oil coming in at some price. And that price that was locked in was through usually some sort of contract. And that was 1 month out. All right. But the delivery could be, let's say you had today's June. So let's just say that you had a contract in May. All right. You closed it out, whatever the price was for that contract. And the delivery could have been June 1st all the way to the 30th, depending on when you wanted to take delivery. Let's just say the delivery was the 30th. Or, yeah, let's just say the 30th. That, June 30th. You're locked in on the oil price that's coming into the refinery with whatever closed for that May contract, which is around the 25th, somewhere around the 25th. For delivery anytime between June 1st to June 30th. Now, we stated that it's going to be June 30th. Right? So they're locked in at a high price relative to what today's price is. They're processing the gasoline, and that gasoline cost is going to be due to the cost of the input that was at a higher price. Now they ship it. They process it, they ship it, and now it's a relatively higher price, and it's in July. We're in July. You go to the gas station, you're filling up your tank, and it's maybe lower than a month ago or 2 months ago, but it still seems relatively high. It takes about 2 months of lag to actually see a drop in oil shown in the actual retail gasoline pump. It takes time for that price to move through the system. It's not immediate because the refinery took an input that was at a high price, and it takes some time to process and to ship and to be used up in the market. So the oil that's being processed next month, if it stays low, when they ship it to the gas stations, when they ship the gasoline to the gas stations, it's going to be lower. But that's because their input was lower. The current gasoline that's at the gas station right now is based on higher inputs. higher cost of inputs, not lower cost of inputs. And that's the reason why it's going to take some time. It's usually about 2 months.
With what's happening, we are doing a big investigation on it.
Mike, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess you would say we don't have to do a big investigation on this. Why aren't gas prices lower as we see oil prices dropping?
Well, if he wants to do investigation, you should start with futures traders because those retail prices are spot on with the wholesale gasoline price. They're all going lower. He's right. But there's much more of a lag. Remember, that's retail. It's on the street, what you pay. And then what we deal with crude oil, that's wholesale. The key thing, though, is I think he's right. Prices will go back down to where they were before the war. But now we're in summer driving season. That's when prices are typically high. So by the time we get the midterms, before the invasion, before the war in Iran, prices, the average price in the U.S. is running around $2.90 a gallon. Right now, it's $3.90. I think we go back down to $2.90. The key thing to remember, though, is every single time we've made those lows below two have coincided with a little bit of problem in the stock market. And that's what I really worry about for the second half of the year. I think he's going to get those lower prices, but if it comes on the back of the stock market, that is potential thing he's not going to want for the midterms.
Mike, I also want to ask you about my favorite subject, which is gold. I feel like it's had an interesting 6-month run. And earlier this week, it dipped below 4,000 an ounce for the first time since last November after gaining for quite a few months in a row. Silver's also dropping. Do we know why? And what happens if interest rates go up this year? How is that going to impact the prices?
Well, that's part of the reason gold started to go back down. It was very precedent for the war. It peaked right before the war. But the problem with gold, silver, most notably precious metals, is they just went up too much. At the beginning of the year, gold reached its highest ever versus a Bloomberg Commodity Index. It was a 40-year high versus a 60-month moving average. And most significantly, versus a treasury market, the treasury bond market, it's right now the lowest. Our treasuries are about the lowest in almost since 1980s, early 80s versus gold. So to me, gold put in a pretty significant high back in Q1, and it's probably going to be stuck in a range for years. That's usually how it works. The significance is, though, it just went up too much. And another thing to remember about precious gold and certainly silver is
you would make more money in the stock market than putting it in the gold.
supposed to be selling them, or yeah.
Mike,
Box my jewelry line on
just
the channel.
off
Sorry,
that.
dude, go ahead.
No, Mike, very quickly here, our boss has said Mike McGlone can talk about anything. He's an expert on so many things. You raised a rhetorical question in your piece, which is, what does the president of the United States want when it comes to energy prices? And I'm going to give you 30, 45 seconds to answer that. If you kind of try to analyze the psychology of him vis-a-vis the energy market, what's the answer?
You want it lower.
Well, that's been my key theme all along, why prices will not stay up. They will go down because he's the leader of the world's largest energy producer and exporter, and he needs prices to go down, partly because inflation is the number one issue and affordability is the number one issue in an election.
All right. Prices will go down, gasoline and oil, but it's not going down to $40 a barrel. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It's a very comprehensive compound profile. This is a month's supply. This has all the vitamins, minerals, and other supplements that you need to help to bring back your youthful self. It works on multitude of systems. It helps with musculature. It helps with brain function. It helps with sleep. It helps with your cardiovascular system. It helps with your immune system and your endocrine system. It's very powerful. Use this as the base, as your multivitamin supplement, but you get a lot more out of this than just a regular multivitamin. So please take this every day. This does wonders, and you will notice that you have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day, no crashing. And you'll notice that within 72 hours when you start taking it, that you'll have more of this vitality and you want to do more things because it's helping the production of your energy, helping the health of the mitochondria. You're producing more ATP. You're being able to use your energy, proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids more efficiently. and you're going to be slow down. You'll be slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. It's a great supplement that you should be taking every day, and use that as your multivitamin supplement. Now, magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your brain function and help with your immune system. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with your skin, your immune system, and brain function. And Good Night Formula helps you to get into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep to consolidate memory, to detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. When you do this regularly, you will be able to improve your brain function and slow down the aging process. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Take it every night to allow you to get into that deep sleep that will help to slow down the aging process. And you can stack this. You're taking this at night, you're taking this in the morning to boost up your immune system, brain function, and skin health, and take the Boomer Boost in the morning to help with your other systems. This is a great stack right here. Now you can stack things any way you want. I got lots of supplements. But Boomer Boost, super important to take. Super important to take. This is a key feature to slow down the aging process. And you're bringing down inflammation, you're soaking up those free radicals. It's a great supplement. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. These are supplements that I take every day. It works. I'm the most comprehensive when it comes to this whole anti-aging. It's the most comprehensive, most affordable way to do it. There are some people out there like tech bros, Brian Johnson is one of them, that spend $2 million to try to slow down aging. You don't need to spend $2 million. All you gotta do is just listen to me. Just listen to me and do what I'm doing. And it'll work. And it's cost effective. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, now I want to listen to, this is a little bit more philosophical clip, talking about what's going on with reading, what's going on with trying to find good books.
Rewarding millions, or will we work like a team? That's why U.S. bank smart investing and savings are designed to work together so we can reward you more. That's the power of us.
Fraction of a fraction.
Chew into it with extra.
It's odd. If something's free, people just can't resist it. More bad thing is that people turn down free money by not switching to customers.
Even stronger, that modern books are garbage. The idea behind this is that at some point in time, books used to be good, and then something happened, and now they're bad. And at one point in time, I think I might have agreed with this line of thought. I am someone who likes to read a lot of classic books, and I've certainly had the experience of picking up a contemporary novel and thinking that it was, pretty bad, pretty boring, not really that well written. And previously, I would have taken that experience with one or two of those novels and just generalized about contemporary literature as a whole. But I started thinking about the actual argument for this conclusion, and I realized that I was wrong. And I think that people who are claiming that modern books are bad now are wrong too. In fact, there's a lot of really great contemporary literature out there. The problem isn't that books are getting worse, it's that it's getting harder to find the good books. So let's start with some numbers here for a little bit of context. Publishers Weekly is a website that publishes, you guessed it, publishing news. And recently they reported that in 2025, there were about 4 million books published in just the United States. That is a huge number, obviously, and it's also a 32.5% increase from 2024. And when you hear that number, you might think, there is no way that all 4 million of those books are good. And that is almost certainly true. I am sure out of the 4 million books that were published in the United States last year, many of them are bad. And I'm sure that also many of those books might be good by some, metric, but they wouldn't be the sorts of books that I want to read. We need to try and break down those numbers a little bit, because just thinking about 4 million books being published isn't all that helpful. There's a writer on Substack who goes by the name Fisher the Bookseller. They are the book buyer for an independent bookstore in Louisville, Kentucky called Carmichael's Bookstore. And they wrote an article analyzing some of the numbers from Publishers Weekly to try and make sense of them. And I found it incredibly helpful. First, that 4 million number includes books that were self-published. Now, self-publishing is not what it used to be. I think even 10 years ago, but certainly 20 years ago, self-publishing was largely seen as a vanity project. And if you heard that a book was self-published, you could reasonably conclude that it probably wasn't very good. There were exceptions, but it was a good general sort of rule of thumb. But self-publishing now is very, very different. There are writers who can make a real living self-publishing, and some of those writers end up getting some amount of critical acclaim. And there are examples in genres like romance and fantasy where self-published writers are putting out books that readers really, really like. But self-publishing is also easier than it's ever been. Basically, if you have a laptop and an Amazon account, you can write a story and you can immediately self-publish it on a place like Amazon. And because it's become so easy to self-publish, I think that it's fair to assume that there probably is quite a lot of low-quality writing that is being self-published, which isn't to say that there isn't any high-quality writing that's being self-published. It's just that because it's so easy, anyone can publish anything, and that's probably not the best way to get the best books. And I don't think it would be fair to judge literature as a whole in 2025 or 2026 based on the fact that anybody can now self-publish a book. And it's not just that that 4 million number includes self-published books, it's that self-published books make up the majority of that 4 million number. In fact, the total number of self-published books in 2025 was about 3.5 million. That is a substantial increase from 2024. I assume that's because of the prevalence of AI-generated books. If you go on a place like Amazon, you will clearly see that AI-generated books have flooded that platform. So if we set aside self-published books, and we only think about traditionally published books, books that were published either by what's called the Big Five, those are places like Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster, or independent presses, then the number of books that was actually published in 2025 gets substantially smaller. It goes down to about 640,000 books. That's still a huge number, but it's a much smaller number. It's a much more manageable number that we can actually try to evaluate. But that number still is misleading, and this was something that Fisher pointed out that was really helpful. You see, Publishers Weekly was not counting individual books. They were counting individual ISBNs. ISBNs are the unique identifiers that you find on the back of a book. It's like a barcode or a social security number for your books. And a single book might have multiple ISBNs because you need a separate ISBN for things like audiobooks, ebooks, hardcovers, paperbacks, and special editions, which are becoming more common. So if you published one book as a hardback, paperback, ebook, and audiobook, there is a chance that you are counting one single book up to 4 times in a given year's data set. That brings our number down to about 164,000 books. And there's one more thing you need to keep in mind about that number. That includes books across every category and genre. So it includes fiction and nonfiction, of course, and we can break that down even further. It includes fantasy, science fiction, romance, literary fiction, women's literature, which is sort of its own publisher genre. It includes cookbooks, self-help books, puzzle books, and game books. It includes so many sorts of books that I don't think people always have all of those in mind when they want to say that books in the modern day are bad now. And when you break down those numbers even further and you look at just general books, including fiction and nonfiction, for the sort of generalist, non-specialist reader, that gets down to about 50,000 books per year. Now, this still leaves us with a problem, right? Because if you're a reader, there is no way that you could look at a catalog of 50,000 books and reliably find only the good ones. And it takes substantial time and effort, either on your part as a reader or on the part of the industry, people like Fisher who are choosing which books to stock in a bookstore in order to find, separating the wheat from the chaff. And I think that is the real reason why people say that books are getting worse. It's not even necessarily that books are getting worse. It has just become harder and harder for individual readers to find the books that they would enjoy reading. I started watching some videos and reading some articles where people were complaining about books getting worse. And in many cases, they wanted to blame the internet, and they really liked to blame TikTok. Now, I don't like TikTok. I don't post on TikTok. I don't consume TikTok. I do not have the app on my phone. But something about this argument strikes me as like a little bit too easy. Like it's too easy to blame TikTok for all of our problems, right? And most people don't think that books got substantially worse in 2025. They think it's been happening for 10 years or 5 years, or at least the last couple of years. But TikTok didn't really get popular until 2019, 2020. And most of the books that are being published now were just being written around that time. This is something I don't think a lot of people realize, that publishing is a very slow industry. If a novel is being published in 2025, it has been sitting on an editor's desk for at least a year. And there was probably at least a year before that where it was going back and forth between an editor and the writer. And before that, the writer was probably working on it for several years, trying to find an agent, going through that whole process. So some of the books that are being published in 2025 were only just being written around the time that TikTok got popular. And I don't think that TikTok got popular and then immediately ruined literature, right? So the timeline just doesn't seem right. And I don't think we've identified the cause just yet. So that makes me skeptical of this explanation of blaming the internet and blaming TikTok. But I also don't think we're giving TikTok or the internet enough credit when it comes to actually helping people find books that they want to read. So last year I read I Who Have Never Known Men. It's a science fiction novel from the 90s. I really enjoyed it. It tells the story of these women who are trapped in this prison sort of structure. They're guarded by men who won't even talk to them. And it's told from the point of view of this young girl who has no memory of the outside world. I enjoyed I Who Have Never Known Men, and the only reason I found out about it was because I was browsing my favorite local bookstore here in Austin, which is Book People. If you're ever in Austin, you should go check it out. I was browsing and I noticed that it was on the shelf, and I kind of liked how the cover looked, so I read the back blurb, decided to buy it, and it ended up being a really good book to read. But the only reason that I Who Have Never Known Men was even on the shelf at Book People was because it went viral on TikTok. You see, I Who Have Never Known Men was originally written in 1990. It was published in French and it was written by a Belgian author. While it does seem to have received some critical attention in the French-speaking world, as far as I can tell, it got almost no attention in the English-speaking world until the last couple of years. It went viral on TikTok in 2024, and then it sold 100,000 copies in the US, which is a huge number for a book to sell. Now, that was a great book, and one of the tragedies is that the author, Jacqueline Hartman, died in 2012, so she didn't get to enjoy the recent success of her book. And this story is sadly common. Really good books get written, and then they just sort of fade into obscurity. But every once in a while, partly due to the internet, but not always, some of these books can get renewed interest and people start reading them again. I Who Have Never Known Men likely never would have found its success if it weren't for the internet in general and for TikTok in particular. And this is a really weird argument for me to be making. I'm sure that anyone who watches this channel knows that I am very skeptical of the internet and of TikTok, but you got to give credit where credit's due. I was able to read a good book, and it was because of the people that everyone likes to make fun of, book talkers. One of the major benefits of the internet is that it can help you find those lost, interesting books that might have just fallen through the cracks when they were originally published. This doesn't mean that you have to go on TikTok if you want a good book. What it does mean is that actually finding the books that you want to read requires some work, some effort. And right now, because so many books are being published, if we don't put that effort in, we're never going to find books that we love. And that's why people then say, man, books these days, they really suck. Unfortunately, though, negative content on the internet does.
This is who feared what prostate cancer would mean for his life and his sexual health. MSK helped him feel confident in his treatment plan so he could feel confident about both. People treated for cancer at MSK live better, longer. This is what we do.
So you guys are just like State Farm, right?
Unfortunately, though, negative content on the internet does much better than positive content. I'm sure you have seen this for yourself. And so a video, a TikTok or whatever about hating a book is always going to get more attention than a video that just talks about how much they love a book. But I can't help but wonder if we would all be able to find better books and be a little bit happier if we spent more time talking about things we loved rather than talking about things that we hated or that made us angry. And this is why I like going to independent bookstores. Major chains like Barnes & Noble mostly are just going to pick out books that are already popular, books that have already proven that they can sell well. That's their whole business model. But independent bookstores have more creativity and flexibility. And one of the things I really love about going to a store like Book People is that they'll have on the shelves just areas for the employees to recommend books. The first thing I do whenever I walk into a bookstore like that is find those shelves and look through it. And I've often really been happy with what I found. Book People even does this thing where they wrap the books in brown paper and they write a description on it. It's called, a blind date with a book. And I bought a book like that once, and that was how I discovered Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky brothers, which I was incredibly happy to find. It ended up being a science fiction book that I love. In a world where you're being flooded with information, you need to find those sources that you can trust because they are going to direct you towards books that you would actually enjoy reading. So to sort of tell you where we are right now, I think that the real problem with the books are bad argument is that it's not reckoning with the fact that books could be equally good as they were, 20 years ago, but just harder to find. But I think there's also one other major problem with this line of thinking. People don't just say that books are bad now, they say that books have gotten worse. And when they're saying that they've gotten worse, they're comparing it to something. And they're usually comparing it to either some list of classic books that they like to read or books that they read when they were younger. Let's talk about that second one first. When you first start reading, whether you return to it as an adult or you did it as a teenager or it was when you were a young child, everything feels fresh and exciting. That's because you don't have a lot of experience as a reader. So you pick up some book and you don't know that maybe it's hugely derivative or maybe it's actually not that well written. All you know is that you really enjoyed it. And that is a great period of life. Like my son right now is about 3 years old. And while he can't quite read yet, he likes to grab books, flip through them, and he narrates the pictures for himself. And the very last thing I would want to do is go up to him and say, those books, those are not that good. Here's a book that you would really like reading. Maybe one day I'll be able to do that, but he's 3. What am I going to do? Like hand him a copy of Plato? I'd be an idiot. And when I think about books that I read as a teenager, I remember nothing but good things. I remember all of them with fondness. I don't think I ever read a book that I hated, probably until I was at least in high school. And I was devouring books at the time. The moment I finished a book, I just picked up another one. My parents would take me to weekly trips with the library where I would check out the maximum number of books I could read every single week, go home and read them, and then go back the next week ready to read more. But if I looked at books that are written for teenagers now, I probably wouldn't like them that much. And that's for a pretty simple reason. I'm a man in my 30s. Those books aren't for me anymore. And even if I went back and read some of the books that I loved as an early teenager or as a child, there's a chance I would go and say, wow, these aren't as good as I remembered. And that's okay. That's just a part of getting older and coming to terms with the fact that you're old, the past wasn't actually as great as you remembered, and maybe somehow reckoning with the fact that you're going to die one day. When we non-critically compare books we're reading now to books that we read when we were kids or teenagers, we are just indulging in nostalgia. And I don't think that's a good way to start judging modern literature. But if we're talking about books that were only written for adults, you'll see people saying things like, yeah, this modern book that I read, it's not as good as like Tolstoy or Melville. And I want to say, of course it's not as good as Tolstoy or Melville. Tolstoy and Melville are 2 of the great geniuses. They are the exceptions. And if you read the contemporaries of Tolstoy and Melville, you would have also said they're not as good as Tolstoy and Melville. If it turned out that every single year had a book that was as good as Moby Dick, that would be a miracle. And what we're doing when we compare all of modern literature to the great books or the classics is comparing this huge amount of books, maybe 20,000 novels every single year, to a highly selected and curated list of the best books that have ever been written. See, these lists of great books and classics, they're actually a fairly modern invention. A lot of it came up actually in the 20th century. And when people started to make those lists, they were trying to curate the best of the best. One of the early attempts to do this was called The Great Books of the Western World, which was edited by Mortimer Adler, who was one of the authors of the book How to Read a Book. You may have heard of it. That series begins in ancient Greece and ends with Sigmund Freud. So it goes to maybe 400 BCE, I'm guessing there, to the mid-20th century when Freud died. But there are only 52 volumes in that entire set. So it's saying that in this 2,300 year period, we have found the 52 best volumes that have ever been written. Now, it's not 52 books, because within a volume there could be multiple books, but even if you multiply it by 5 or so, that's only 250 books, which comes out to less than 1 book per decade. There are other great books lists that you can find. They're all over the internet, and there are whole books that have been written about them. And they might have, 100 novels on the list. But even when you have 100 novels on the list, notice what we're doing. We are focusing on a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of all of the novels that have ever been written. So when you take any random book that has been published in 2025 and you compare it to that highly selected list of the best novels that have ever been written, yeah, it's not surprising that any random novel is not as good as the books on that list. That's like saying that you're stupid because you're not as smart as Einstein. You might be smart. You just might not be a genius like Albert Einstein. So I guess I want to say that I wish people would just kind of chill out when they talk about how bad modern books are. If you actually go looking for those books, you'll often be surprised. I just read the latest book by Karl Ove Knausgård, whose name I only recently learned to sort of pronounce. I was never saying K before then. It was called The School of Night. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I have a stack of about 20 or 30 novels that have been published in the last couple of years sitting on my shelf, and I'm just working through them. Do I love all of them? No. Do I think many of them are good? Yes. Do I think a lot of them are worth reading? Absolutely. So if you made it this far in the video, I want to ask you to do 1 or 2 things. First, I guess this is my last video, but I'm no longer taking sponsorships on this channel. So if you like the kind of videos that I'm making about books and philosophy, I ask that you consider supporting me over on Patreon or Substack. On Substack, I actually run a book club. This year, we're talking about the philosophy of technology. We're reading some novels, we're reading some philosophy, and I've been benefiting greatly from the discussions I've been having with my subscribers over there. You can also participate for free in that book club, by the way, so you don't have to pay me anything just for the pleasure of reading those books.
So the key takeaway is there are still great books out there to read. Now, let me give you an example. I'm reading one right now. I read a lot of books too. But usually when I read a book, it's big. It's very big. But what is it about? It's about capitalism and the global history. Now, there was a lecture about this book that I attended. I did read Piketty's book, and Thomas Piketty said a monumental book, a must read. They come from a similar cloth. They cut history very thick. Piketty wrote about the 21st century capitalism and constructed these data sets. It's more data driven. Piketty's book is more data driven. This book is more from a historical narrative perspective. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. It's over 1,000 pages long. Many notes. It's the notation and the research is well done. Through the epilogue, we're at the 1,087 pages. So it's a big book, all right, and it's going to take some time to read through it. And currently, I just started maybe about a week ago. I'm at 227. But it's important to read. And you get a lot of benefits from reading. One, you are activating certain areas of your brain. You're slowing down a little bit in this fast-paced society that we're in with just consuming information and scrolling and all this stuff. So it's a little bit of a meditative aspect to it. It helps with the imagination to picture in your mind what you're reading. And you can learn something through fiction or even nonfiction. Now, I prefer reading nonfiction, but reading is important. But there are great books out there. You just have to find them. Sometimes they're smaller, they're around 250 or 300 pages. Sometimes they're over 1,000 pages. And this is, you can lift weights with this. But one of the takeaways from this book is this long arc of capitalism. Capitalism is not a new thing. It's a very old concept. And he made a statement in this book. Peckert, who is a professor at Harvard in history department, he made a statement in the book, and he stated that capitalism is a form of artificial intelligence. Now think about that for a second. Capitalism is a form of artificial intelligence. Now, everyone that has, I'm going to go on a tangent here. Everyone that has traded markets or has learned about modeling economics or watching data sets of economics or listening to the financial news and has seen this arc of your life being played out within the context of economics and finance will realize that there are lots of variables, lots of emergent properties that no one would have predicted, positively and negatively, that affects society. And in these markets, in trading networks, they act like nodes in the brain. So if you zoom out on the world and you're looking down on the globe, you will see certain areas with more light than others. And you see these little strands of light going to a larger light source. Well, these large light sources are cities. But connecting those cities are these little light sources. These are very much like exons on a nerve, on a neuron. And they're connecting bodies, nerve bodies. The nerve bodies are the actual cities. So when you look at the world, it looks like a network, a neural network. When you look at trade paths, going all the way back to the 1st century, 2nd century, even during the Roman Empire, BCE, you had roadways going to certain regions where there were activity. And there was this communication going from one nerve center to another nerve center. And there was information, goods and services. So goods and services were flowing just like an electrical signal going through an axon. So capitalism, the flow of goods, even before the internet, was a neural network. Capitalism, and that desire to move out into the frontier to develop, is like a growth signal, a micro growth signal to allow for dendritic connections to form. And new activity centers start to develop. And the neural network starts to grow even further. So yes, a lot of people in the modern day are using the term artificial intelligence through OpenAI and Anthropic and all this stuff. But we have been exposed and affected by artificial intelligence through commerce. Commerce And capitalism is artificial intelligence. That is a really important concept to grab hold of. So when you take a look at the markets, a lot of artificial intelligent algorithms were developed and trading algorithms were developed because of this dynamic in the financial markets. Lots of information to analyze and then allow for a prediction to take place, price movement. It was a perfect laboratory to develop artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is not a new thing. It's actually a very, very old thing that we've been exposed to for a very long time. That's a key point to remember. Capitalism, commerce, is a form of artificial intelligence because of the neural network it creates. Now, the book is talking about the whole history of capitalism. And it's fascinating because it talks about the cotton trade and slavery and merchants and the dynamic between merchants and the rulers of a certain region and the growing network that was taking place. Trying to find new routes to the spice trade helped to circumnavigate the world. That's what was the funding for circumnavigating the world, was to find new routes to Indonesia. Super important to understand this history and this conductivity that has been taking place in the world is a form of artificial intelligence. There is an intelligence within the neural network that has been built in markets. Okay, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. Lignans will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, helps with the endocrine system and the immune system. It's a great way also to help with brain function and cardiovascular health. Ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and blood glucose levels, helps with the cardiovascular system, and helps with the immune system. You can stack them together for max benefit. You can also stack it with turmeric. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Probiotics. I have the powdered version or the veggie cap version. Take either one, but take it every day. It'll help with your gut biome, allow you to absorb your nutrients. It'll help to bring down inflammation at the gut level, reduce leaky gut syndrome, reduce your chances of getting food allergies, help with the immune system at the gut, improve the communication between your gut and your brain and your gut and your liver. Your metabolism will improve. Your sleep pattern will improve. You'll be able to concentrate better, and your skin will improve. Please go to my store, get the probiotics, either the powdered form or the veggie cap form. Take it every day, super important. And you should be stacking that with the Boomer Boost. And get the collagen. Collagen will help with the health of your skin, nails, and hair, musculature, bone density, and joint health. So please go to my store, get the collagen. This is a month's supply. Take the vitamin C and magnesium supplement that I have. Drink filtered water. That vitamin C will cross-link with the collagen and improve your dermal layer for your skin. Please go to my store and get the collagen. You can also stack it with the C60. C60 with resveratrol will help with the basal layer of the skin. So you help with the topical layer with the gel, the dermal layer with the collagen and the vitamin C, drinking filtered water, and the basal layer of the skin by taking resveratrol and C60 from my store. You are improving the health of all three major sections of the skin: the topical, the dermal, and the basal layer. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All righty. I want to listen into this video about socialism. And I think it's talking about Venezuela.
They put the plate down like it's a piece of art. They make me feel that way.
Your day demands versatility. Meet the vehicle designed for it all, built for more.
5 million died in the early 30s because of Joseph Stalin, and at least 750,000 executed in Stalin's Great Terror. Why? Because those that wanted to rise up against socialism. Welcome back. Socialism isn't happening overseas anymore. It's now in our backyard. Socialist governments have left the path of destruction across Europe, Latin America, and Asia. So let's take a trip down memory lane. No greater history lesson of the failures of socialism than the Soviet Union. Vladimir Lenin plunging into socialism, which pretty much paved the way for the rise of Joseph Stalin, where we saw a famine. 5 million died in the early 30s because of Joseph Stalin, and at least 750,000 executed in Stalin's Great Terror. Why? Because those that wanted to rise up against socialism had to be persecuted with the grip of power that they had. That failure, one of history's greatest lessons. But remember East Germany, Ronald Reagan tear this wall down in 1990? Well, that begins under the East German government that also had to use coercion. And they did so by the Stasi getting over 189,000 informants spying on East Germans. At least 140 died at that wall before it came down in 1990. Bulgaria doesn't get much mention, but another great case of simple textbook socialism and communism failures. 20 to 40,000 people murdered without any trial. Check this out. Remember, the collectivization of land is at the heart of socialism. In 1947, under 4% was collectivized. 10 years later, it's 90%. Hungary, everyone knows that story, a great textbook lesson of it. 1956 anti-communist revolt, crushed by who? Soviets. They're following the Soviet playbook. Hundreds of thousands are fleeing to the West. We're still dealing with some of that now. China, by the way, one of the only still socialist and communist models, but the famine in their history killing 20 million. In Venezuela, we're well aware of that. An interesting point about what we have tried to do there. Even still, you have over 50% living in extreme poverty. And the IMF estimates that the inflation rate staggering 682,000. Quickly, let me just show you one more wall, and that is the candidates that we know on this coming Tuesday out in Colorado. You have Balac Quiros, a Democratic socialist, endorsed by Bernie Sanders, running against Rep. Diana DeGette, who's been there for roughly 30 years. She, by the way, lost her job as a lawyer in New York for writing anti-Israel writings. She is leading the Democratic Socialist charge out in Colorado. We have out in Missouri, remember Cori Bush? She was far left. She's socialist. And by the way, she's decided she's going to go farther left. Now, you've got in August a primary happening out in Michigan, and that is State Rep McKinney. Rep. Sri Tanadar, by the way, is a very progressive leftist. He's just not left enough. So the DSA brought in McKinney. And finally, out in Wisconsin, State Rep Hong getting in a gubernatorial race, gaining some ground, by the way, with her socialist push. We'll see where that goes. But it is all eyes right now on Colorado to see if Balac Quiros can actually unseat Debbie.
I hope we put back that wall of socialism that you have, because there is an absolute blackout in American curriculum on these facts about the death, destruction, poverty caused by socialism. Take a picture, parents, of that. Show it to your kids, because it's not being taught in their schools. We're going to bring in Daniel DiMartino, who fled Venezuela as a teenager 10 years ago. Daniel, it's always great to have you on, firsthand. It's not something in ancient history, the death and destruction and poverty caused by socialism. What do you make of this, the rise of these quote unquote Democrat, socialist, communist candidates in America? What would be your message to Americans, your warning?
Yes, good morning, Rachel, Griff, Charlie. Look, what I see here is that there is a coordinated attack on the United States and on the Democrat Party. The socialists in this country know that they cannot create their own political party because they cannot win elections under this system. Nobody would vote for the Socialist Party. So what they're doing is that they're trying to primary and take over the Democrats from the inside and use them to advance their agenda. That's why they have a separate infrastructure. That's why they're funded separately. You know, when in New York City, the primaries were won by socialists last week or this week, what happened was that Alicia Singham Goodwin, who is the niece of Neville Roy Singham, the far-left billionaire in China that's been funding all of this, she's on the steering committee of the New York City DSA and was celebrating and coordinating all of this. So we have, I fear, a foreign attack to take over the Democrat Party and ultimately the United States.
You know, it's interesting when
I'll keep this quick. We need a huge number of donations today to flip this U.S. Senate seat in Texas. If everyone watching this right now made a contribution, we'd reach our goal in seconds. But I know not everyone can give right now. So if you care about taking back Texas and can afford to chip in, then I need your support today.
You know, it's interesting when I remember the fall of the Soviet Union, so much of that was driven by young people who were disaffected by the totalitarian state that is required under communism. And it's interesting to look around today. So many of those young people, as Rachel says, they're not taught about this stuff in schools. But what is it like for you, knowing what you know, to see this effort for socialism in America driven largely by young people?
Yes. So in Venezuela, what's interesting is that they definitely created resentment among the population, the poor against the rich. And the poor, truly, in Venezuela at the beginning, in the early 2000s, did support Hugo Chavez, did vote for socialism. That's what makes the Venezuelan case important for us in America. That Venezuela is the only of the socialist cases that you guys mentioned that elected socialism into office. And of course, we couldn't elect it out. We needed President Trump to come in on January 3rd. So the difference with America, though, is that it's not poor people voting for socialism. It is highly educated, middle-class people. There has never been people so free and so rich in a country like America that are voting for their self-destruction like this.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Daniel, I know that your heart and soul right now, as an immigrant to this country, but originally from Venezuela, your heart is with the Venezuelan people right now who are going through, the terrible repercussions of an awful earthquake. We're going to be talking about the earthquake later, but I want you to put it in the context of socialism, because a lot of the destruction that we're seeing earthquakes happen, but very, very poor, dysfunctional, corrupt countries are unable to handle it. And I think a lot of it is caused by that. What are your thoughts on that?
You got it absolutely right, Rachel. We need to pray for Venezuela, for the thousands of victims. Look, the truth is Japan faces, Peru faces, Chile faces 7.0 earthquakes all the time. And you don't see tens of thousands of deaths, and you don't see tens of thousands of homeless people and people who are just missing, like in Venezuela. And the reason is that Venezuela's most affected areas were government socialist housing projects, the free public housing that they want to sell to us as a good thing here in America. And that fell apart, of course. The other thing that happened is that the government is actually actively stealing the aid from the people. The government doesn't want to let civil society organize. That's what socialist governments do, because they don't like free enterprise, they don't like freedom. And lastly, the other thing that happened is that because there's a shortage of medicine, there's a shortage of goods, people who have left who are physicians, then the people who could survive end up dying, and these are all preventable deaths.
Yeah.
Such a great perspective.
Yeah. We need elections in Venezuela. Things need to change.
That's right.
The United States needs to pay attention to this DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. They are communists, and they're gaining momentum in this country. Educated people that want to have an affinity to God, country, and family, and be aligned with the Enlightenment and not postmodernism, need to fight back. You got to push back against these socialists. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help to boost up your energy levels. How? The first 4 B vitamins helps the electron transport chain within your mitochondria, so you're producing more ATP. That's a major energy source for your cells. They'll help to boost up the cellular metabolism and protect neurons through vitamin B12. Protecting your neurons, especially when you're 40 years of age, is very important. Resveratrol helps with the basal layer of your skin to improve the health of your skin. It stacks really well with C60. Resveratrol also helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Resveratrol soaks up free radicals and helps the health of your mitochondria so you have more energy. And resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression. Resveratrol is super important to take every day, and you get synergistic benefits from it when you stack it with C60. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get resveratrol. Myotrol. This will help with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. Take this if you're 40 years of age or older to reduce atrophy and to build muscle. And by building muscle, you're improving your concentrations of myokines and BDNF, which are neuroprotective. So you're actually helping with your brain. Yes, by building muscle when you're older will actually help with brain function. Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help to build muscle. Helps with the gene expression. And it'll also help you to recover after your workout because it helps to bring down inflammation. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit also with taking myotrol to build muscle. It stacks really well with gladiator barley. Omega-3 helps with the cardiovascular health, brings down systemic inflammation, helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And omega-3 reduces the over-stickiness of your red blood cells. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. And since we're in the allergy season, make sure you get the structural nanosilver lozenges. You can get an orange splash that's fortified with vitamin C and manuka honey. Take the structural nanosilver lozenges if you are exposed to an allergen, or if you're cleaning around the house or you're outside working in the yard. Really important to take it prophylactically. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver lozenges. All right, let's listen into the attacks that have been happening just recently in Iran.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome in. You're on Live Now from Fox. The time is 7:57 if you're joining us over on the East Coast, and 4:57 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'll be here with you for the next several hours as we break down all of your top stories and live events from across the country and the world on this Sunday. I do want to start off with the developing news that we are following out of the Middle East, and that, of course, includes the U.S. and Iran conflict as well as the situation between Israel and the Hezbollah terror group. Right there on the right-hand side of your screen, you are taking a live look over the Strait of Hormuz at this hour, and I do want to pop this up on your screen to give you a better look. Now, we continue to follow all of this as Iran today has now launched missiles and drones on U.S. military sites in Kuwait and Bahrain, shortly after President Trump warned the U.S. might, quote, militarily complete the job, end quote. In video from Kuwait today, the sirens could be heard sounding as well as what sounds like missiles being intercepted. A lot of activity going on in the sky as folks were sent running for cover here. I want to play out some of the comments here as we are watching all of this unfold. And of course, you can hear just some of the sounds there. Again, interceptions overhead, as well as those sirens sounding, essentially telling folks that they need to run for cover. Now, U.S. Central Command released some video on social media. I want to pop that up on your screen here to give you a look, as you can see some of the strikes that are taking place by the U.S. on sites there in Iran. CENTCOM saying it shows U.S. military aircraft striking Iranian military, quote, surveillance infrastructure, communication systems, air defense sites, drone storage facilities, and mine layer capabilities following an Iranian attack on a merchant ship on Saturday. Now, the U.S. had resumed retaliatory strikes on Iran Friday, a day after an Iranian drone targeted and struck a ship off the coast of Oman. The U.S. calls it a clear violation of the Memorandum of Understanding signed about 2 weeks ago by Iran. And we know as all of this is playing out, there are questions about the future of that ceasefire, also known, of course, as a Memorandum of Understanding. President Trump posting this right here on Truth Social saying, quote, United States aircraft just struck Iranian missile and drone storage locations and coastal radar sites for violating the ceasefire agreement again. It is very possible that they will never learn. There may come a point when we are no longer able to be reasonable and will be forced to militarily complete the job that we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist. So a clear threat coming in there from President Trump. Now, of course, as always, there is a lot to discuss here, and I do want to bring in a great friend of the show, Mark Chandler, who helps us to break down all of the latest developments here on a regular basis, I would say. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox on this Sunday morning.
You're welcome, Josh, and thanks for having me today.
Of course. And first off, I want to start here by breaking down the remarks from President Trump, essentially saying that at this point,
before we continue with Mark, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to bring down the load on your pancreas when you're digesting. It'll help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. It has the enzymes that you need to digest your food, to be able to absorb your nutrients more efficiently and less load on your pancreas. This is really important. If you're 40 years of age or older, your pancreas isn't working as well as when you're younger, no matter how healthy you are. So it's really important to improve the health of your pancreas. Please go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex. Digestive enzyme complex also has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins, and it has bromelain, which is an enzyme to help break up clots. This is the reason why I told you to take it in the crisis of 2020. So if you want to also improve your cardiovascular health, guess what? Digestive enzyme complex will help with it. There's a dual purpose for taking digestive enzyme complex. Vitamin D3, gene expression cofactor, helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected, helps your cardiovascular health, and also to produce denser bone. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. Super important to take, and make sure you do some resistance training.
The Islamic Republic of Iran will not exist if all of this continues here. Break down those remarks as essentially this is something that we've heard from President Trump before, but based on what we've seen over the past several days, seems more realistic of a possibility.
Well, Josh, that's an excellent point that you make right there, because we have heard these comments from the president before as he's trying to reach this diplomatic solution. And one thing that I talk about is you can make all those threatening comments you want, but if you don't back them up with force, then you lose some deterrent credibility. I think what we've seen in the last 72 hours is a small restoration of some of that deterrent credibility. The U.S. has struck, although they're limited strikes, kind of a tit for tat that focuses on what Iran is doing, and we strike back to that. But they are strikes. So I think that's starting to back up some of the statements that the president's making. And the fact that he pointed out the Islamic regime speaks directly to this leadership. It's not the Iranian people, it's the Islamic regime that runs Iran, primarily with the supreme leader, but predominantly the IRGC.
And I do want to pop this up on our screen right here. This is coming in just now from our buddy Trey Yingst over at Fox News as he follows everything on the ground from Israel. He said, today, Iran launched missile and drone attacks against Bahrain and Kuwait following the U.S. strikes overnight. The U.S. strikes were carried out in response, as we mentioned, to Iran targeting vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. And as we continue to talk about the strait itself, we do have that live look coming in from marine traffic. We've been showing it a lot over the past several months where there is some movement here. But I have to imagine, Mark, that now there are questions about whether or not it's actually safe for these vessels to travel the strait, especially after what we saw at least 2 different times this week from Iran.
Well, Josh, I think what points to is one of the problems I had in the original MOU agreement, and that involves the wording on the Strait of Hormuz. It still gave Iran tacit control over the strait and gave them 60 days to develop a clear passage out there. So what the U.S. did, and
the United States should have never had this MOU agreement. It was an off-ramp for Trump to try to save face. Trump was chicken. He wasn't willing to use ground forces to control the Strait of Hormuz. He should have used the Marines and the airborne. But again, he chickened out because Trump always chickens out. Now, here we are again, and it looks like military operations are going to need to commence again. And so oil is probably going to start ticking back up. But we wouldn't have had this problem if Trump decided to get the job done and do it right 3 weeks into the war. Oh, it's not a war, it's an operation. See, we're even using legalese to define our military excursions. We're not even willing to call it war. It's just, Trump failed miserably with this.
Cooperation with the Gulf states and primarily Oman is develop a southern transit corridor, not the traditional middle of the strait transit corridors, but they were getting ships out through the southern part. Iran didn't like that. And by the way, we got almost 250 ships out in the last 8 days. So that's a significant increase compared to what was happening during the shooting. However, Iran wants those ships to use the northern part of those routes. So what it did Thursday was strike any of those ships. It actually launched 4 drones. One of them hit a ship. They launched 4 ships going through the southern part of that transit area, not the one that Iran approved. So I think that's a weakness in the MOU, and it's something where Iran's trying to reestablish its control. And we can look at just a few minutes ago, the foreign minister made a statement from Baghdad saying Iran has complete control of the Strait of Hormuz for the next 30 days. No attempt should be made to interfere with that. So Iran's staking its claim to the straits right now.
And as we kind of just...
You're invited to join Phoenix Energy's next webinar, where you can drill deeper into our bond offerings. We currently offer 2 investment opportunities, a private placement.
And as we kind of discussed this, we know that we heard part of that memorandum of understanding essentially did involve the Strait of Hormuz, but we also know that another part of it is all about the nuclear deal and whether or not Iran can ever have a nuclear weapon. Can you kind of break down for folks out there how that fits into all of this now, considering that as you take a closer look, we already have the situation with the Strait of Hormuz, where it appears that Iran was not necessarily very honest about the situation. So what about the nuclear weapons? We have to imagine they're not necessarily telling the truth about that either.
Excellent point, Josh. All Iran's trying to do is stall and delay and be able to remilitarize itself and get some money going through this process. The nuclear weapons issue is a critical issue. It is something that Iran, number one, they said they don't want nuclear weapons, but they've always said that. They even put that in the memorandum of understanding, but that's a throwaway statement. What we're really looking at, and there are 2 points in the agreement that concern me, and that is, one, Iran only says it will downblend some of that enriched uranium on site. There's nothing in there about the removal. So that gives Iran a chance to maintain uranium inside the country that's downblended. So we have to be concerned about that. The other part is the statement right after that in the MOU says there's going to be no changes to the nuclear program. So there's really no gain in that. And that's where Iran has leverage because they know how bad the president wants a nuclear weapons deal. The program through Midnight Hammer in 2025 and in what Israel and the United States did earlier this year is set back several years. So Iran has bought itself some time and trying to buy time, and it's not really giving up anything except that enriched uranium. And there's another concern, Josh, that the deal doesn't cover. It doesn't cover any of the infrastructure for the nuclear weapons development or nuclear research. So if they can downblend 60% enriched uranium, that means they feel confident they still have some infrastructure that survived the attacks. Because the infrastructure that you would use to create highly enriched uranium would be the same type of stuff you're going to need to downblend it. So there's something still left in Iran that still exists and not damaged by the United States. And that's a concern that we have to look at as we work our way through.
And what I want to do, we always want to hear from folks at home or work, wherever you're watching us from here. So let's pop this up on your screen because we want to know what you think as for whether a true ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is within reach at this point, based on everything that we've seen not only over the past several months, but over the past several days specifically. If you do want to vote, you can scan that QR code top right-hand side of your screen. It'll take you to a website, Vote Now, where you can pick either yes or no. Right now, only a couple votes have come in as we just put this up, but you can see that most of the people there say no. That's 67% versus 33% saying yes. Mark, where do you kind of stand on this? I have an idea of what you're going to say, but where do you stand based on the current situation?
Josh, I don't want to influence your audience, but I do not have a lot of confidence that we're going to see a lasting ceasefire out of this MOU. These strikes that have gone back and forth between Iran and the U.S., that's typical when you have a ceasefire agreement. That's not an escalation. Although I would say right now, we're closest to going into an escalation phase than we have been since the entire ceasefire has been under implementation. So we have to watch that. We could be spiraling toward an escalation. But let me characterize this a little bit different for your audience. There's a ceasefire, and then you hear a lot of words about a peace agreement. I want to emphasize that based on Iranian behavior, the Islamic regime's behavior over the last 47 years, there will not be peace in the Middle East. If I look at the definition of peace, and I look at that in a dictionary or at the State Department, peace isn't going to be there. A cessation of hostilities for a temporary basis. Is that 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? That may be it. But Iran is going to continue to destabilize.
And this is the reason why Trump should have put ground troops in theater to destroy the IRGC and the theocratic regime. And the international community works together to allow for a constitutional republic to be born in Iran. And we can set it up where there's trade, and the United States would benefit from it. It would benefit from it economically, and we would benefit by stabilizing the region and controlling oil supply to China, just in case they decide to invade Taiwan. But Trump was chicken, because Trump always is chicken about everything. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35 or the Cleanse or the Max 14. They're at different price points and different parts per million, but these will improve your innate immune system. Take a teaspoon a day every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds and swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, help the health of the epithelial cells, and your innate immune system will be boosted up. Super important to do every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 6 years every day. And you'll also notice that during the allergy season, you're neutralizing those allergens and preventing an allergic reaction. So please go to my store and get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Take it every day. I also have structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, bring down inflammation at the gum line, and reduce that irritation and improve the gum line. It will help to neutralize because it has the structural nano silver, and it has no fluoride. So this is the best toothpaste that you can buy. There's nothing better than this. Now it is a little bit more expensive, but this is the best toothpaste that you can buy. Now, with this toothpaste, by improving your oral cavity, you're also reducing the chances of cardiovascular problems and valvular problems, because a lot of people don't realize poor oral hygiene can lead to cardiovascular problems. So please go to my store and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off. All caps, discount 5. And by taking these supplements regularly, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to get healthier. So please, pay attention. My show will tell you how to get healthy and wealthy.
Interest in American personnel, just as they've killed a few thousand since 1979. We need to understand that in a strategic picture. Yes, there's a cessation of hostilities, but I don't think we're going to see peace in the Middle East as long as this Islamic regime continues to exist.
And we've kept this up for just about a minute or two at this point. You can see the results are clearly overwhelming, 93%-ish saying no, whereas 6% are saying yes. And as of right now, I mean, this is still, I've had it up for about a minute, but more than 200 people have cast their votes, and that's what they're saying at this point. That number only going to rise, so we'll keep showing you kind of the results there. But another thing that I want to talk to you about, Mark, this is something that you and I have discussed quite a bit over really the last several months, and if you think about it, several years here, and that's the situation between Israel and Hezbollah, the terror group there over in Lebanon. Can you explain how that factors in, especially now as you have this agreement that's been reached? But in reality, it doesn't really mean much if you have the U.S. and Iran still fighting as well, because we could see things kind of escalate once again between Israel and Hezbollah.
Exactly, and there are a lot of nuances here, but try to break it down. Iran put this in the first paragraph of the MOU, cessation of hostility, to include Lebanon. Iran doesn't care about Lebanon. They care about Lebanese Hezbollah, their number one proxy throughout the Middle East. You know, Hezbollah does Iran's bidding 90% of the time. So you have to look at, they're trying to protect Hezbollah and its ability to attack Israel from southern Lebanon. So that's what that's all about. And this week, there was another great agreement between Lebanon and Israel that was made in Washington, D.C., a trilateral agreement that included the United States. That doesn't hold Hezbollah accountable. As a matter of fact, Qasem, the head of Hezbollah, came out and said the deal is null and void and rejected it. Because what it calls for is Lebanese military to move into certain areas of southern Lebanon and keep Hezbollah out, disarm them, dismantle the infrastructure, and take away the threat to northern Israel. That's a heavy lift, and they're going to try to do it through a couple of pilot areas, but Israel gets to maintain its forces to protect in southern Lebanon to protect northern Israel. So that's a key component. But let me caveat this. One, Iran doesn't like that. Hezbollah doesn't like that. And since 2006, that was supposed to be the agreement anyway after the 2006 Israel-Lebanese Hezbollah war. Hezbollah is supposed to stay north of the Litani River. They have not done that. The UN failed to keep them out. The Lebanese military failed to keep them out, and they continued to attack Israel. Very key point. But if Iran can keep this in there, they can say that the MOU is violated at any time. So that's a critical component. I don't see a resolution coming in the near term on that one.
And more than 500 votes coming in here is a true ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran within reach. And again, as I mentioned, overwhelming majority. That's likely to be the case here. We have no 94%. Yes, 6%. I imagine the results as they continue to come in from folks watching us right now are just going to kind of stick around because the number of votes continues to rise here. Now, one thing I also want to talk about, because as we talk about Israel, we continue to get these posts coming in from the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, this one saying eliminated Mansour Sami Mahmoud Shekau, commander of Hamas's naval police in the central camps, alongside 2 additional Hamas commanders. He and the two terrorists operated in recent times to advance terror attacks against IDF troops and were eliminated while traveling armed in a vehicle and posing a threat to IDF troops. Again, we're getting a lot of these that continue to come in, but that kind of speaks to the fact that as you have Israel facing Hezbollah, Israel is also still taking action against Hamas.
Exactly. And let's remind the audience that Hamas is another proxy for Iran. And so as we see, there actually is another ceasefire between Israel and Hamas for the Gaza Strip. The problem is we've been stuck in phase 2 of that ceasefire for months and months and months, while Hamas takes pot shots at the IDF forces in Gaza. There's a lot of humanitarian relief that's taken place. Everything's working in favor of the Palestinian citizens in Gaza, except for Hamas. Hamas has refused to disarm. They've even been voted out, although the vote really won't carry any weight with Hamas. They're continuing to put pressure on the Palestinian citizens in Gaza and take these attacks. So as long as Hamas remains a viable fighting force, it's not the level it was when they conducted the initial invasion of Israel, but they are there. They are able to conduct attacks. They're going to continue to conduct attacks. They're not going to disarm. And therefore, you will have no final resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. And you're just going to have to expect these type of attacks that are going to continue from Hamas. And the IDF is going to take actions to take out the leadership.
And again, we want to keep this up because we want to hear from you folks at home, work, wherever you are watching us from here. Is a true ceasefire between U.S. and Iran within reach? All you got to do is scan that QR code top right-hand side of your screen. You can vote yes or no. Now, when you scan that QR code, it should take you to the Vote Now site. Again, yes or no. And right now, an overwhelming majority, 94% saying no, a true ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is no longer or not within reach. All right, so Mark, another big question here. What should we be watching for as we kind of see all of this play out over the next several days, weeks, months? It's a question that I've always asked you since all of this began months and months ago.
Well, I think what we have to watch for right now is we could be, as I mentioned earlier, on the precipice of the escalation back into open conflict. The United States, the president's talking tough again. He's had some limited focus strikes this week that's starting to return that deterrence effect. Iran is striking back. They're not going to be cowed. They're going to continue that very vocal messaging to the international community, threaten the Gulf states. That's what these attacks are doing, and threaten the world with control of the Strait of Hormuz. So as we watch over the next couple of days and see how strongly Iran counters their attacks. And then what the U.S. does. Those attacks right now by the U.S. are limited. They're along the coast. There's some radar sites. And by the way, some of those radar sites have been restored by Iran since the ceasefire. So they've had breathing space. If the U.S. is serious about pushing back militarily, you are going to see strikes much deeper into Iran and focused on the IRGC leadership, trying to get at the decision makers, the power brokers behind the Islamic regime at this time. That's when you're going to know that we've reached an escalation point. Or if Iran starts to launch more and more, instead of 2 to 3 ballistic missiles or drones, they start to launch a barrage of them into the 10s or 20s of those. Then you're going to see an escalation, and I think all bets will be off at that point.
Do we have any idea at this point who's acting?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Super Strong Relief. This will give you temporary relief in 90 seconds or so. It's very quick acting. It's a topical where you put it on an area where you have pain for arthritis, for muscle aches, tension headache, bruise, a sprain. So please go to my store and get the Super Strong Relief. This stacks really well with the collagen when you're trying to remodel your joints due to a sports injury or arthritis. So please go to my store, use this topical Super Strong Relief. Very effective. Fast acting within 90 seconds. Also go to my store and get the structural nanosilver gels. You can get it in the tube version or in the quick dispenser. Now, the structural nano silver, dual purpose. It helps to be a daily topical for your skin to improve your skin health, helps to heal the wound quicker, and you can use it during the allergy season. Lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours to help to neutralize. And if you're in the cold season, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your mouth, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours, like I said, and neutralize, because that's the structural nanosilver. So make sure you have some at work and some at home. You never know when you need it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Leading over there in Iran. We've seen, obviously, the foreign minister who's been very involved in all of this. We know that the new supreme leader, and we continue to call him the new supreme leader because his father was in power for decades and decades. But do we know if it's the supreme leader, if it's the foreign minister, president, the IRGC? Do we have any idea at this point?
I believe, based on what we're seeing with the military action and the strong points that Iran is bringing in the negotiations, that the true power broker is General Vahidi, the head of the IRGC. He's the one, he's a very staunch, radical Islamist. So when you look at how he's playing that out, he led the Quds Force. You know, he leads the IRGC. There is nothing compromising about him. I believe that there's a partnership, and that's odd to say for the Islamic regime, but the fact that they need to show legitimacy to the loyalists, if you will, especially the religious loyalists there, the supreme leader still gets to come out and make statements, although no one's seen him or even heard his voice, since the attacks way back in February. I believe IRGC is making the calls. There might be a little dissension in there, but I want everyone to understand there are no moderates in any way, shape, or form in the folks making the decisions inside Tehran at this time. They are all staunch, Islamics, and that's what you've got to look at moving forward for that regime. You're going to have to take that leadership out if you want to even get remotely close to people who might be willing to negotiate openly and honestly.
And as you mentioned, Mashtama Hamani has not been seen. We've received these kind of written statements that are attributed to him, but then you have a TV news anchor who reads it or someone else there. So there has been no sighting of him, but President Trump, as well as Secretary Hegseth, other folks, Secretary Rubio, have said they do believe that he is alive. However, there's also reports that he's been disfigured, and that might be why he hasn't been seen, has not spoken, anything of that nature. So all of that important to keep in mind here. Mark Chandler, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us, helping to break down all of the different developments. Anything we missed? I know
we're going to go to Fox News about this subject matter, but please go to my store and get the zeolite. Detoxifying your body is super important because it's going to help with your immune system and your endocrine system. And also your other organ systems. By detoxifying regularly, you're helping your brain function and your cardiovascular health, your lung function, your liver function, your kidney function, your spleen. All these organ systems are going to perform better by detoxifying your body regularly. And you can detoxify your body by taking the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley, or taking the zeolite. Now, zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Now, you should take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that daily to detoxify your body. And you will notice that it'll help many organ systems. Again, your endocrine system and your immune system, but also brain function. By improving your lung function, by detoxifying and improving your lung function, you're actually improving brain function. Why? You're getting more oxygen into your bloodstream, and that higher oxygen level will help with brain function. In addition, by having less inflammation at the lung level, especially around the alveoli, you will have less leakage of certain types of inflammatory cytokines and less leakage into the bloodstream of debris. When you have inflammation at the lung level, you start to get debris and proteins and pro-inflammatory cytokines into your bloodstream that actually can dilate your blood-brain barrier, and these proteins and pro-inflammatory cytokines can get into your cerebral system and cause inflammation. And chronic inflammation at the brain level will lead to misfolded proteins, higher chances of tau accumulation, and amyloidosis. So improving lung function is super important. Improving your liver and your kidneys, you'll be able to filter out your blood better. And with better blood filtering, less toxins are in the bloodstream. And that means less toxins getting into your brain through the blood-brain barrier. So detoxifying your liver and your kidneys help with brain function. And by detoxifying your body, you're also helping with your musculature. And by improving your musculature, you're improving brain function. How? You're improving the concentrations of myokines and BDNF, which are neuroprotective. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the zeolite, take it every day. And collagen. Collagen is a great way to remodel your joints if you have had a sports injury or have arthritis. What this will do is remodel the cartilage and remodel the cushioning of the joint, block the pain gatekeeper NAV 1.7, reduce inflammation by inhibiting EP4, and reduce the erosion of the joint by blocking MPP3 and MPP13. When you do that, when you're blocking that, you're reducing that joint erosion. So please go to my store, get the collagen, stack it with the collagen, so you have the building blocks to help with remodeling the joint. And do this exercise. It's really simple. If you have a problem, let's say with your elbow, but it doesn't have to be just your elbow, any joint. You open up the joint to the point of pain. Move the joint up to where the pain is and go a little bit more, just a little bit, and count to 20 or 30 seconds. Relax it, let it rest a little bit, and then do it again 2 or 3 times. And do that every day. When you do that, you'll notice that you'll be able to open up the joint more without pain. And stack the collagen and the collagen together. So you have the components to remodel the joint, and you're doing this exercise to actually allow for the microenvironment, this microsignaling, to help with the remodeling. This is part of the reason why when you do resistance training, you're creating a microenvironment to tell your body to rebuild denser bone. Well, you can do something very similar when you do this type of exercise to help to strengthen that joint and to stretch that joint out. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen, And to detoxify your body, take the zeolite.
Six pack, 6 colors, multifunctional pockets, and they're actually comfortable. For this price, this 6-pack is such a smart summer grab because you get 6 colors, the pockets are practical, and they feel wearers.
Yes, Iran's ceasefire is under pressure this morning as American forces launch retaliatory strikes near the Strait of Hormuz.
And President Trump is now warning that the U.S. may have to finish what they started if Iran continues to strike.
Yanks is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. The United States conducted another round of airstrikes against Iran overnight after the IRGC targeted shipping vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. According to U.S. Central Command, a variety of different targets were hit, including Iranian military surveillance infrastructure, communication systems, air defense sites, drone storage facilities, and mine layer capabilities. The president posted a Truth Social shortly after the strikes, saying the United States aircraft just struck Iranian missile and drone storage locations and coastal radar sites for violating the ceasefire agreement again. It is very possible that they will never learn. The president goes on to say there may come a point when we are no longer able to be reasonable and will be forced to militarily complete the job that we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist. In response, Iran launched missiles and drones toward Kuwait and Bahrain. This was the second exchange of fire this weekend between the United States and Iran. Vice President Vance posted to X over the weekend saying, Iran signed a ceasefire agreement. We have honored it. If they have disagreements about how the MOU is being applied, they can pick up the phone. But violence will be met with violence. The new military action comes as the situation between Israel and Hezbollah plays out as a separate but parallel issue. The Israelis launched new strikes against Hezbollah this weekend as Hezbollah continued attacks against Israeli forces in southern Lebanon. Late last week, there was a diplomatic breakthrough in Washington as the Israelis and Lebanese signed a framework agreement aimed at normalizing ties between the two countries and disarming Hezbollah.
These were intense talks, difficult talks, but we arrived at an agreement, the framework agreement, which will allow for the achievement of a full peace agreement between our two countries.
While the situation in Lebanon is stabilizing slightly, there are questions about if the technical talks between the United States and Iran will move forward this weekend as scheduled due to the fact that the Iranians are still testing this fragile ceasefire agreement. Guys?
So, Trey, you mentioned and you laid out perfectly what's happened over the weekend. In two separate cases, Iran, who has perceived the MOU as being violated, the ceasefire, that they are striking Kuwait, Bahrain, but yet this seems to me that this week we are going to climb up the escalation ladder when you have Vice President Vance saying violence will be met with violence. How do you see this week playing out?
Yeah, it's possible. Look, this memorandum of understanding is a very simple agreement. It's about a page and a half, and it very clearly states the Strait of Hormuz has to be open. And the president has indicated there will be no tolling of the strait, and they can't be launching drones and missiles toward vessels that are trying to pass through. But the Iranians continue to do just that. They have targeted these vessels with a variety of attack drones, and these one-way attack drones can cause significant damage to these vessels that are often carrying sometimes 2 million barrels of crude oil through this critical waterway. And there are still thousands of sailors that are stranded in the Persian Gulf. And so these strikes overnight are meant to send a message to the Iranian regime that if you continue to try to destabilize the region and test this agreement, that ultimately this is going to be met with the force of the U.S. military. And that is why you saw those extensive U.S. strikes overnight. And both President Trump and Vice President Vance have indicated that if the Iranians do not choose the diplomatic track, that the military option remains on the table.
So, Trey, Iran's Arab neighbors applauded the memo of understanding. What do they make of this latest skirmish and the U.S. Launching retaliatory strikes against Iran?
It's a bit ironic because you had in the past 24 hours the Iranian foreign minister traveling to Baghdad to meet with his counterpart and the president there in Iraq. And during his remarks, he said that the Iranians are still interested in creating a Gulf coalition. But as he was making those remarks, these Gulf countries were shooting down incoming Iranian fire. And the damage that we saw was caused to residential buildings. And it's an indication that while the Iranians continue to say one thing, their actions don't match their statements. And that's exactly why the administration is watching closely what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz. But again, these Gulf countries are on the front line of this conflict. The president told me previously he was most surprised by the fact that these mostly neutral countries came under direct Iranian assault during Operation Epic Fury, despite the fact that they weren't involved in the conflict. And that's exactly what we are seeing today, the Iranians lashing out against these neighbors that they claim they want peace with. But in reality, they are launching missiles and drones toward residential populations.
Yeah, it seems like maybe these Gulf countries are realizing they're going to have to find some sort of arrangement or peace with Iran because they are the targets when things go wrong. So great to have you here and with that report on the latest that's going on in the Middle East. Thank you so much, Trey.
Thanks, Trey.
All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
Very high probability that oil is going to go up, not radically, but it's going to be moving to 74, maybe up to $78 a barrel if tensions continue to rise. I most likely Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I suspect that oil will be going up. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration, so I highly recommend that. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And by taking C60 every day, you're soaking up free radicals. What it will do is, at the cellular level, soak up those free radicals and improve the health of the cell, help to improve the health of the mitochondria. You'll have more energy, more ATP. You'll have less stress at the cell, and your tissues will perform better. So your organ systems will perform better, your immune system will perform better, your endocrine system will perform better, cardiovascular health will improve by soaking up free radicals at the bloodstream level. You're reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL, so you're reducing plaque formation. At the brain level, you're improving the health of the neuron, reducing inflammation, soaking up free radicals, improving the health of the mitochondria, so your neurons can produce those neurotransmitters. You'll have positive neuroplasticity. You'll be able to think faster. You'll have better memory. The health of your brain tissue will improve, and the basal layer of your skin will improve. By soaking up free radicals and improving the basal layer, your skin will improve over time. C60 will help to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, get the C60, and I highly recommend stacking it with a few of the other supplements that I have, such as the Max 35 or Cleanse, the ashwagandha root, the lignans, and the turmeric. Also stack it with the Boomer Boost and the probiotics. And you do that combo that I just mentioned, that's a very powerful protocol to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, get the C60, and stack it with the resveratrol to help with the basal layer for your skin. And your energy levels will improve, and you'll recover after a workout faster. So please go to my store, get the C60. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please help support the work that I do by being a paid member to my Patreon channel, and share the links, ask your social media to follow me. I need to reach a larger audience. If you pay attention to my broadcasts, I'm telling you how to slow down the aging process, how to improve your health, and also how to mitigate the risks that are happening in the world and how you can benefit from those news announcements in terms of your finances. I'm telling you how to play the market based on information that is taking place in the news. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.